Hi guys, Sean at Shock Surplus here, and today we are finally bringing you a good in-depth review of our BP51 setup on the Tacoma. So it's been a long time coming. I know you guys have been waiting for this, mainly because we haven't spent too much time in the Tacoma recently. We did a lot of testing sessions with it up in Monashi Meadows, down in Mammoth, all over Johnson Valley. We've put quite a few miles on these shocks, and the biggest takeaway is one of my favorite shocks that have been on this Tacoma by far. We've had, we've had the Bilstein 5100s, we've had the Fox 2.0s, and we've had the Icon Stage 8, and now we have the old Man Emu BP51 with internal bypass, compression and rebound adjustment, front and rear. So quite a few features on these shocks that aren't available in a single package in the other major manufacturers. When thinking about changing out the shocks from the Icon setup, it wasn't because the Icon setup was falling short in any way. We just needed to get them rebuilt. We have about 50 to 60,000 miles of mixed use in the Icon 2.5 setup. So easily 10 to 20,000 miles of that is in the dirt, hard miles, dirty miles. So those things need to be rebuilt every 30 to 40,000 miles. And so they're off right now, and we decided to test out a new setup. A lot of our customers, including you guys, are also debating between the Fox 2.5 with DSC, the King 2.5 with adjustability, the new Bilstein 8100s with adjustability in the rear, the zone control in the front. So there's a lot of options out there right now. Dobinson's is coming out with a three-way adjustable shock and strut for the Tacomas. We got ADS, we got Radflow, we got Toy Tech. There's so many options out there. So one of the big things that we want to do is just demystify what all these settings really mean for your vehicle. So between all those items, between all those shocks we just listed, we were going for adjustability. We wanted to see what rebound and compression damping mixed, really how that actually provided either more comfort, more control, more confidence, whatever the case may be, how it really translated to the ride of the vehicle in various situations. So the old Man Emu BP51s were very much the clear winner there. Fox DSC was considered. Jeff loves them on his Tacoma, but it's dual speed compression damping, and we really wanted to be able to alter the rebound in the shocks. So that left the Bilstein 8100s, but the 8112 front coilovers don't have any adjustment available to them, and the rears were not in stock because COVID. So BP51, no brainer, and I'm really glad we did it because these things have excelled extremely well so far. The really big difference is that you can make these shocks as soft as anything else out there. These shocks definitely got much softer and much more floaty and plush on the highways compared to our previous Icon setup, compared to anything we've ran before from Fox or Bilstein. These things can get really soft, almost dangerously so. And I say that because if you have the incorrect combination of settings, very low compression and then very poor rebound. If you have very low compression, then you're allowing the full suspension to like compress and to tuck on an obstacle or on a highway joint. So if you're on a highway and you hit one of those highway joints and the vehicle compresses and there's very low rebound, you can actually lose control of the vehicle because of going 50 miles an hour and the tires leave the pavement on the highway. That's no good. So we actually, through our experimentation, we kind of had that behavior happen to us. So just a forewarning, you don't want to go too soft and play around without knowing what you're doing. Beyond that though, the comfort on the easy gravel stuff, the easy rock terrain stuff improved significantly. One of the big things is the baseline for what I had in mind for our kind of higher or medium speed ride control was that the Icon 2.5s were excellent at high speed stuff. Going through a lot of the desert, not so much the whoops. I hate the whoops. I'm not a fan. So all of our discussion is not talking about how to handle whoops better, because most of our crowd, most of the people we wheel with and we hit trails with, we're not high-speed desert runners. Just going to throw that out there. So, but we like to get after it in the desert. So when we do that, there's a bunch of unpredictable terrain. You know, your washes are all over the place like this. You got washboards, you got berms, you got unexpected obstacles all over the place. So being able to hit those at a pretty decent clip, while still understanding that your vehicle isn't going to do anything too drastic and it's going to stay planted and going in the same line, that's a big plus for confidence on the trail. So getting back to that point, on a shock that is not necessarily race inspired, it's got a decent sized piston still got a 51 millimeter piston, which is very comparable to Icon's piston in their 2.5 inch shock. But Icon, they have their rebound settings, and the rebound settings are set for kind of a race shock, race inspired driving. So it's going to be, I would say it's on the higher rate of things, whereas these shocks, you can set rebound very low or very high. And very low rebound would mean that as you come up on an obstacle, how fast that wheel is going to maintain contact or drop out of the suspension. Very low rebound that shock is going to do what it can to slow down the wheel from dropping out of the suspension over an obstacle. Additionally, as you compress the suspension, that shock is going to slow down how much the body reacts as it decompresses. So being able to adjust that behavior on all four corners makes a dramatic difference in your trail comfort and the vehicle behavior on the trail, coming off of rocks, coming down off dips, unexpected side-to-side actions in the faster stuff. You can really fine-tune all of that behavior with these BP51 shocks, which I really like, because we found ourselves not so much in the desert anymore, SoCal, but more in the mountains, Mammoth and NorCal and Lake Tahoe, Colorado, Montana. A lot of this is all slower trail stuff. You're not doing high speed. You're not even doing medium speed, because A, it's rocky, B, you're on the side of a mountain. So you're not gonna, you shouldn't be risking your vehicle. We've seen a lot of accidents this year for people getting a little too squirrely on mountain roads and icy roads. So that's not what we're about. So back to the baseline of how we stack all these shocks up to get up against one another. So the high speed stuff, I still wanted to be able to say to myself that the BP51s and adjustability on a non-race shock can still accomplish the same thing through the adjustment. And I feel pretty confident that that these do that. I was still able to clock in 50, 55 through the same kind of normal dirt terrain down in Johnson Valley, Cougar Buttes, with the same kind of control and load bearing capability of the RXT leaf packs. So this still does have the RXT leaf packs on it. We did remove the hydraulic bump stops from the Icon 2.5 kit because it conflicted with the reservoir mount on the BP51. So we're going to have to go to like a Timbren kind of active bump stop system in the rear. But with all that being said, the great thing about these is that the internal bypass, I think, really makes one of the biggest difference in overall ride comfort. Anytime you're going to have an action on the road or in the dirt that would result in harsh feedback to the driver, our comfort, which is what we're always measuring up against, that internal, that piston is going to work less. It's going to work less while the while the action that would provide the harsh feedback forces that extra oil, instead of going through the piston and resulting in bad feedback, it's actually just going to bypass that piston and go to the other side of the shock, allowing that piston to have an easier transfer through the shock body. So, you know, internal bypass usually on all shocks usually means that the designer of the shock is aiming to provide the most comfort in a ride zone that is where the driver is spending most of their time. So most of our time is on the pavement, most of our time is on the easy gravel stuff, maybe minor rocky stuff. That's kind of what the ARB and Old Man Emu engineers are kind of going for. They know that that makes up most of the driving. So they're going to aim for the comfort to be dialed in at that middle ride zone, and then allowing the end zones for their specific kind of higher impact damping, and then compression and rebound to fine tune all of it in the entire range. So by far, probably one of my favorite shocks that we've had on the Tacoma. I don't anticipate changing these out anytime soon. Really interested in a couple other options out there, but when customers are, when we're really considering what kind of shock to put on your vehicle, you got to really ask yourself, how fast are you going? How much do you really want to get after it? What does your terrain look like? What does your vehicle weight loadout look like? Is it varying quite a bit? Is it are you having family in sometimes? Other times rolling solo? Do you have a constant weight load of 500 pounds, 1,000 pounds? No constant weight load? Do you have a bed cap? Do you have racks? All this stuff kind of makes a difference, because if you're running a pretty trim, slimline setup and you like to go fast, then, you know, I consider these more of a trail shock than a race shock. We kind of categorize Fox, King, Icon, Radflow, ADS. These guys are much more race inspired, much more high speed inspired in their shock designs. So while that stuff is excellent to really go at a good clip out there, and they still work on mountains. It's not like it's not going to work on the slower stuff, but you do get a lot more feedback on the rockier stuff, on the rock crawling, on some of the washboards particularly. These shocks, when you're in an environment with a lot of washboard, you can tune that rear rebound in the rear so that your axle's not hopping all over the place, which I know for a fact is the poor behavior of a lot of suspension out there. There's an entire troubleshooting guide that Old Man Emu includes with these shocks on how to tune your compression in one direction or the other, along with your rebound, to achieve the exact behaviors that you want, or to troubleshoot behaviors that you don't want, kind of the same thing. So with all that being said, I think it's a highly recommended set of dampers here. So far, so good. Everything, really enjoyed being on these, playing with the settings. There's only a couple things that I do not like, which we'll get into right now. So one of the only things I don't like about this setup is just the access to the collar on the shocks, which controls the adjustability. This lower collar controls compression, top collar controls rebound. So as you can see here, you can't actually, like, very few spaces actually have access to for this to clip on to one of the grooves, and in order to turn it, there's not a lot of movement available, and you are going to scratch your springs. So for those worrying about scratching springs, it's going to happen on these. This is suspension product that's going to get beat up. So there's that side, and then you have the other movement the other way. Not easy. I need to get some good leverage, and there's not a lot of points to where you're able to get a full turn. You're only going to be able to move this probably about an eighth of the way around before having to reset. And sometimes, based on wheel and tire combinations, you don't have that movement here. You're gonna run into the tire. So overall, in the front, I wish, you know, I hope they achieve a little bit of a different way to make the adjustments besides on the shock body behind the springs. The other part is going to be in the rear. Now, in the rear, it's actually much worse, mainly because getting down here and getting a wrench around this piece isn't the easiest. You should not have your rock guards on the shocks in the rear if you do plan on making adjustments on the trail. If you are going to have the rock guards on, then it's much easier and almost only possible to adjust these if the vehicle is suspended with the lower mount fully drooped out. So when you're making these adjustments, you can turn it, but you see some of the shock is going to turn by itself, and that actually didn't make any adjustment to the settings. So you can see here making numerous turns, and it's only changing the shock. So that's very interesting. Finally reached a point to where it's allowing me to actually make changes to the Rebound. So there we go on that. And now compression, though, look at all, there's like no room because the leaf pack here, and I've got 2 inches of movement here to make that happen. Not going to work. Going back the other way, Rebound isn't too hard since we got room up in here, but compression down in here, no room. So when you think about going to the back and trying to guess and get that collar without actually seeing it, that's another problem. So all of these things you're going to kind of figure out on your own. And yeah, it's the biggest issue for us, mainly because we're testing the shocks quite a bit through the settings, seeing how they adjust. A lot of people are going to set the settings at the beginning of the trip and set it and forget it. So that's the adjustment process. Just keep that in mind. I would bank on jacking up the rear of the vehicle, making your adjustments before the trip, and kind of forgetting about it until you get back home. One more thing that we see, and a possible point of concern. So the other major point of concern is, see how this hose right here is, now it's completely bent. So the reason why that's happening is because these might get too loose. And so while they're not too loose for operational purposes, they sometimes do get too loose for when you're making the adjustment on the bottom collars. So as you can see in the previous piece where I was making that adjustment to the Rebound, it's very hard to make a physical shock change through those adjustment pieces. It's not like a normal pin like you see on, or a pin adjustment through a knob that you see on, Fox, King, and Icon. These are making changes to the actual shock body internals. So anyways, just keep in mind, so if the shock is rotating itself, not to pinch this braided line. So this is a steel braided line, but it can still pinch. And if that thing gets pinched, then your entire reservoir is just not working, and the main shock is going to think it's working. It's going to try to put oil through there, and you might bust a seal somewhere else in the shock. That has to be rebuilt. So just keep that in mind when you're making adjustments. Double check that these lines do not get pinched. Okay guys, so to wrap up with some real talk, we know that these shocks are super expensive. I think we're probably looking at $3,000, give or take a little bit, for a full set front and rear. comparable Bilstein 8100s and 8112s, they're probably in the $3,500 to $4,000 range. You got a set of Fox 2.5s, King 2.5s. Those are in the $3,000 to $3,500 range as well. So we know that all these suspensions are mad expensive in terms of vehicle modifications. Is it worth it? Definitely worth it. If you're planning on using your vehicle and getting out there and doing all of this stuff, overlanding, off-roading, rock crawling, the suspension is probably one of the biggest determining factors in how much you actually enjoy your time in the dirt and on the roads. Comfort, performance handling, all that stuff. This is all very super nerdy shock talk, so forgive us if if we get lost in the definitions and the technicalities of how all this product works. But the adjustable nature of these BP51s has truly kind of impressed me with how much just the settings can make a difference in the ride quality of the vehicle. I really haven't experienced that in other competitors' products. So I think that says a lot. We've got about 270,000 miles on this Tacoma, 5 different types of shocks, and this by far is probably the most impressive so far. So with that being said, highly recommended. We are acquiring as much of these for you guys as possible. So we've made a lot of good contacts, a lot of good sales in the 4Runner and the Tacoma community with these. So if you have any questions on that specific build and setup, would definitely love to help out and let us know your feedback. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much for supporting our Tacoma build and following along. Hope to see you guys on the trail.